Hey everyone, in this lesson, we're going to be talking about how to determine the right budget for your TikTok ad campaigns. Now I know this is a very commonly asked question and something that there's a lot of confusion about, so I hope to demystify it in this lesson today. So we just learned the rules for seasoning your pixel, and we remember 50 and 1,000 are the two most important numbers to remember. 50 refers to the amount of conversions needed per week on any given ad set to get out of the learning phase. And 1,000 is the amount of pixel events that you need on any given event, like add to cart, initiate checkout, in order to optimize for that lower event in the funnel. So now I'm going to be going through how to determine your budget so that you can make sure that you're getting through the learning phase, and also how long is it going to take you in order to optimize for a lower level conversion event on TikTok. So let's get started. 50 conversion events a week is the amount needed to get through the learning phase. And like I said, I always like starting for e-commerce, optimizing for add to cart on my ad sets. And if you're in a different industry, you can try optimizing for button click, lead, traffic, whatever the top of the funnel conversion event is on your website that you set up. So speaking of add to carts, if I need 50 add to carts a week to optimize my ad set, what that means is first I need to determine what is my cost per add to cart. And ultimately, you're not gonna know your cost per add to cart until you start spending on your TikTok ads, but you can approximate. So let's just say your product costs $100. Maybe you are selling a really nice pan. I only mention that because one of my clients is Our Place and they sell a really nice pan, and their pan is around $100. Now let's say your target, so I'm going to say this is the price of the product. Now your target cost per acquisition is $50. So ultimately, let's just say you're this brand, you are profitable if you're getting a $50 cost per purchase off of a $50 average order value. That would bring you at a 2x ROAS, or return on ad spend on TikTok. So this is a good case scenario. But we aren't optimizing for purchase yet. So we're not necessarily looking at a target CPA in terms of a cost per purchase, but we are optimizing for add to carts. So the first thing we need to figure out is what is my ideal cost per add to cart? And then what is your actual cost per add to cart once you start spending on your TikTok ads? So the first thing is also to look at your data. If you've already spent on Facebook, you can probably estimate how many people that come to my website actually end up adding to cart first. So take the traffic from your site and then see how many people are adding to cart and divide it. And then you can determine what your cost per add to cart is based off of your ad spend. So let me write down a couple examples of that. So let's say that you have a 10% add to cart rate. 10% of the traffic that comes to your site ends up adding to cart. So if you have 1,000 site visitors and 100 of them end up adding to cart, that will put you at a 10% add to cart rate. So that's important to keep in mind. So I would say before you even start advertising on TikTok, figure out what your base add to cart percentage is by going to your Facebook ad account and take any given time range. Maybe you're looking at last 30 days. How many site visitors did I get? And out of those site visitors, how many people added to cart? Just as a benchmark, I would say for my clients, usually this percentage is anywhere between 10 and 30%. Some are higher, some are lower. So it's important to know where you averagely rank so that when you're starting your TikTok ads, you can start to make some assumptions about when I'm driving traffic to my site, how many people are gonna add to cart. And this is based off of your site conversion rate, the offers that you have going on, your product is gonna determine what that rate is. But I would say 10 to 30% is about the average. So let's keep all of that in mind when thinking about how to set your budget for TikTok and what's gonna be the best budget for you to set in order to get to that 50 add to carts a week. So if you know that 10% of people add to cart that come to your site, And let's just say you have a budget of spending $1,000 a week on TikTok ads. I would say it's a pretty healthy budget. So you've put aside $1,000 in order to obtain new TikTok customers, and you're willing to give TikTok a try. So you're spending $1,000 a week on your ads. And what you need to determine is, out of this $1,000 that you've spent, what is going to be your cost per add to cart? So, and let's just say that it's a $1 cost per click. I like to keep things in ones, hundreds, thousands, 10%, just to make things as simple as possible. Now, in terms of your target CPC, or cost per click, I would say that $1 would be on the higher side. Typically for my clients, I'm trying to get a cost per click anywhere between 10 cents and $1 being on the really high side, but you're just starting out on TikTok, your pixel isn't optimized yet. TikTok has no idea who to serve your ads to. So I think $1 CPC when you first start out might actually be not out of the question in terms of like the top of your CPC. So let's assume it's $1 cost per click. So you spent $1,000 on your ads, you have $1 cost per click, which means that you're gonna get 1,000 visitors to your site. So if you follow the logic, spend $1,000 a week, $1 per person who comes to your site. That means 1,000 visitors on your site from TikTok. And we know that we have a 10% add to cart rate, which means, so 1,000 visitors times 10% are gonna add to cart. That means you have 100 people who have added to cart from your TikTok ads on your first week of spending on TikTok. So now let's determine what is our cost per add to cart. So we spent $1,000, we have 100 people adding to cart. That would make a $10 cost per add to cart. So when you're thinking about how much budget do I need to spend in order to get through the learning phase and to achieve a low cost per add to cart, which is ultimately the goal, you have to think back to our rule of 50. So in order to optimize your ad set, you need 50 add to carts a week in order to optimize. In this scenario, I spent $1,000 a week, I had $1 cost per click, and I had an add to cart conversion rate of 10%, which means that 100 people add to cart. So I'm actually getting way past the learning phase. I really, in this scenario, only had to spend $500 a week, which would result in, at a $1 CPC, that would be 500 visitors to your site. And then from those 500 visitors, a 10% add to cart rate would mean that I'm getting to those 50 add to carts a week. And then we can determine it too. $500, my weekly budget, I got 50 add to carts. That would also result in a $10 cost per add to cart. So I like to abbreviate that as CPATC, cost per add to cart. So in this scenario, I can spend $500 a week and get through the learning phase on TikTok and have a $10 cost per add to cart. Now, ultimately, you're going to need to determine, out of everyone who added to cart, how much of those people are actually going to end up converting. So, like I said, you're gonna wanna probably go to your Facebook ad account and figure out your add to cart to purchase ratio. So let me show you what that can look like. And I'll also give you some benchmarks. So let's go back to our $100 pan. Well, $100 pan. You have an average add to cart ratio of 10%. So 10% of the traffic that comes to your site ends up adding to cart. And let's say that half of the people who add to cart ultimately end up purchasing. So this is your add to cart ratio, traffic to add to cart. And then let's say that 50% of add to cart people end up purchasing. And I would say this would be a very healthy add to cart to purchase ratio. That means 50% of people have added anything to your cart on TikTok had ultimately went ahead, put in their credit card information and purchased. I would say this is usually anywhere between 30 and 50% for my clients, just as benchmark averages. So I'm just gonna keep a bit of higher range in mind. I think this ultimately is about your product too. Like if you're selling makeup, like a $12 lipstick, the amount of people who add to cart that ultimately end up purchasing is gonna be a lot higher. It's an impulse buy, it's very cheap, doesn't require a lot of consideration. Whereas if you're trying to buy a $1,000 sofa, that's a purchase that takes a lot more research, a lot more consideration. You're probably going to see that the add to cart to purchase ratio is a lot lower. So there's gonna be a lot of window shoppers who are maybe adding the couch to the cart, thinking about it, looking at your competitors, but maybe end up not buying from you. So maybe that add to cart to purchase ratio is more like 5%, 10%. So it really depends on your industry, the virality of your product, the popularity, and ultimately how much it costs to determine whether it's gonna be an impulse buy, which I would say these ratios are pretty indicative of an impulse buy. And as you know, TikTok is all about impulse buy purchases. People are scrolling through their feed, they're seeing something that looks cool, and they ultimately purchase. So impulse purchases do work the best on TikTok. So I would say this is pretty much average metrics. 10% of people who come through on your ads end up adding to cart, and then 50% of people who add to cart ultimately purchase. So this could be a really good example if you are a makeup brand. I think that these metrics would be pretty similar, except you would have a much lower average order value, or AOV. So you might only have a $20 average order value if people are only buying one lipstick from you. But the math still remains the same. So now let's think about what is our cost per purchase if we have this add to cart to purchase ratio. So I spend $1,000 a week on my TikTok ads, very nice budget. And I know 10% of those people are gonna add to cart. So that would be, and I have a $1 CPC. So we can just assume that spend $1,000, I get 1,000 people to my site. Couldn't be easier math than that. $1 cost per click, I have 1,000 website visitors. Out of those 1,000 people, 100 people are going to add to cart. And then I have a 50% add to cart to purchase ratio. So divide that by 2. That means 50 people from the $1,000 that I spent on TikTok ads are going to purchase, because I'm assuming that half of the people that add to cart are ultimately going to purchase. And when I'm optimizing for add to cart on TikTok, even though I'm not necessarily optimizing for purchase, this is the type of math that I do to ultimately determine what is my cost per purchase on TikTok when I first start running my TikTok ads. So if I assume I spent $1,000 on my TikTok ads a week, I have a $1 cost per click, so I get 1,000 website visitors from TikTok, and I know that 10% of people who come to my site end up adding something to cart, so I have 100 add to carts. I determine that 50% of people who add to cart ultimately purchase, so I take 100 add to carts and divide it by 2 in order to get 50 purchases a week from my $1,000 spent on TikTok, which would mean a $20 CPA, or cost per purchase, from my TikTok ads. So just to review that math one more time. Spent $1,000 to spend on TikTok a week for my ads. I have a $1 CPC, 1,000 website visitors came to my site, which means 100 people added to cart, because I determined that my traffic to add to cart ratio is 10%. So that means that 100 people add to cart. I know that half of the people who add to cart and ultimately purchase, which means 50 people purchased, which is that magical 50 number, like I mentioned before. You need 50 purchases or conversions a week, whatever you're optimizing to, in order to season the pixel. And ultimately, that would bring us to a $20 cost per acquisition cost. So I know it's a lot of math, and this might be something that you may have to review a couple of times and practice your own equations in order to ultimately see how this works out for your business, and also understand that these numbers are changing, because I just assumed a $1 cost per click. But if my cost of traffic is cheaper, then then I can actually have a much healthier CPA if the cost per click is much lower. And like I mentioned, in this example, the $1 cost per click is actually kind of high. So let's just break down the metrics really quickly into determining what variables are going to affect what your CPA is on TikTok, because that's going to determine how you set your budget. So cost per click. This is determined by the CPMs and the click-through rate. Now, what is a CPM on TikTok? That is the cost to reach 1,000 users on TikTok. Typically, I see this benchmarked anywhere between $1 to $10. It is a range, and it also depends on seasonality. So during Black Friday, when things are a lot more crazier on TikTok in terms of people trying to advertise more, that CPM is going to go up. But I would say on average, if I was just in a ballpark, I see CPMs around $5 on TikTok, or on Facebook, I usually see in between $10, $15, $20 for some clients. So CPMs on TikTok are a lot cheaper than on Facebook. So let's say in this example, my CPM is $5. So my cost to reach 1,000 people. Actually, I'm gonna use $10 because I said I like using my tens, hundreds, ones, $10 CPM. So maybe it's a bit more of an expensive time. We're coming into Black Friday or big sales period. And the second thing to keep in mind is your click-through rate. So typical click-through rates on TikTok can be anywhere from like less than 1%, so like 0.5, all the way up to 2 or 3% if you have a really great ad. I would say anything above a 1% click-through rate is considered industry leading. So if you have an ad that's getting above a 1% click-through rate, you have a really great creative and people are taking the action to come to your site. So I'll use 1% in this example. So on TikTok, you start spending on your campaigns. It's $10 to reach 1,000 people. And then 1% of those people end up coming to your site. So that way you can determine what is your total site traffic. So let's just say you're trying to figure out what you need to spend on TikTok in order to reach 50 add to carts a week. And you know that your CPM is around $10 because maybe you started spending for a couple days and you see, okay, the average CPM is coming in around $10. And you also start to determine what your average click-through rate is on your ads. Now, you can't affect the CPM really. This is determined by TikTok. This is just the cost of advertising on their platform. And the more competition on their platform, more advertisers that get on TikTok, this is gonna keep going up and up. So it's really a variable out of your control. But this is a variable very much in your control, the click-through rate. So this is why having really great creatives, really great video ads is so important on TikTok, having a compelling offer, really having a great product. This is what's gonna help your click-through rate of people watching your ad and getting to your site. So let's say you spend $10 your first day of running TikTok ads. Woo! Spent 10 bucks, your CPM is $10. So that means that you're gonna reach 1,000 people on TikTok. TikTok's showing your ad to 1,000 people. And your click-through rate is 1%, which means that you are getting 10 people to your site. So when you start spending a lot less, this is why people always ask me, like, what's the minimum budget I can spend on TikTok a day? And I would say if you need to make sure that whatever you're spending on TikTok is laddering up to getting 50 conversions on your ad set a week. So in this example, let's just say you have a small budget, you're spending $10, you have a $10 CPM. That's gonna mean you get 10 visitors to your site. And let's use our same ratios as before. We have a 10% visitor to add to cart rate. So 10 times 10% would mean one person is adding to cart on that day, where you spent $10, you got one person adding to cart. And this is, if you're only getting one add to cart a day, you are not going to get through the learning phase and you're not going to get to the 50 a week. So that means that you're going to get 7 add to carts a week. Your campaign isn't going to spend because TikTok is going to be like, I have no idea who to serve your ads to because I'm not getting enough data on the pixel. You're not going to see the performance you want because you're not getting through the learning phase, and your campaigns aren't going to optimize. And this is where a lot of people give up on TikTok ads. They start with a small budget because they're like, it's a new platform, I don't want to make any mistakes. But now that you're taking this course, you're not going to make any mistakes. You spend a really small budget, you only get one add to cart a day, one purchase a day. Your campaign stops spending. You're not seeing any purchases come through on TikTok. So you're just like, well, I got 7 add to carts a week. I'm not even close to 50, and this is where people give up. So this is where you need to make sure that your daily budget is laddering up to you getting at least 50 conversions a week, whether that's add to cart, initiate checkout, purchase. So other variables to keep in mind, like I said, CPMs you can't really control. CTR you absolutely can control by having better ad creatives, which is gonna lower your cost per click. So always thinking about how can I make better ad creatives, more clickable ad creatives, a better offer. How am I gonna get people from watching my ad to the site? So that's the first thing. And the second thing, of course, is your actual website, your landing page. How well converting is it? If it's slow, if it's confusing, if traffic isn't converting on your landing page, then that traffic to add to cart ratio is going to be very low. Then if you have a very bad landing page, maybe only 1% of people who come to the site end up adding something to cart, which is just incredibly low, and you'll probably never see success on TikTok ads because you'll have to spend so much money to get to 50 conversions a week. Whereas if you have a very well-designed landing page, a great offer, it's clean, the site speed is fast, you have great product photography, maybe you can even get your traffic to add to cart ratio to 50%. This would be industry leading. I don't know anyone who's getting a 50% traffic to add to cart rate, but I'm just trying to make an example of the more you work on your landing page and to make it higher and higher converting, then that's going to help you spend less on your TikTok ads, but get more results. Because if 50% of people, so if you get 1,000 people to your site and 500 people are adding to cart, then you're gonna get that learning phase incredibly quickly. And you're not gonna need a lot of budget to do so, and you're giving TikTok a ton of data about who is most likely to purchase. So really be thinking about your ad creatives in terms of how can I raise my click-through rate, which will in turn lower your cost per click. And then how can I improve my landing pages and my product pages to make it better converting so that more people are taking action on your pages and ultimately converting, because that's what's going to help optimize the TikTok pixel.